I'm going to go back to the grab tool. Actually, no, I'm not. I'm going to go to the select tool, and I'm going to click on roughly the area where the problem lies. Another little tip is that if you do that, put the cursor where the roughly where the problem area is that you need to look at. Then go to the zoom tool, then it will automatically center the area that you've placed your cursor at, and it will keep that at the center as you zoom in. That can be very, very useful, because otherwise when you zoom into a place you'll find that the well, in some applications you start to zoom and you completely lose where it was that you placed your cursor, or where you wanted to make your improvement or edit or whatever. So obviously the first thing I want to do here is to remove the extraneous silence, which I will do simply by making the selection and then pressing delete. And then I go back to my grab tool, grab the region, the latter part of the sound file, and then drag it back so that it is, well, for the moment, so that it's adjoining the other part of the region. Another way of doing this, of course, if I'm going to undo this a bit. Okay, so we'll go back to our original problem area. Another way to do this would be to use shuffle. So if I click on shuffle, you remember that shuffle shuffles the regions, or shuffles areas of a file, or different regions together. In this case, because I'm deleting a section of the file, it means that the latter part immediately jumps to the end of the previous region. So that could be quite handy in this particular instance. Okay, so I'll zoom out a little bit again, and play back from a little way before. I'm going to turn this off. I'll come back to that in a bit. Okay, so again, it may well be that you can't hear from on there. There is still a click where the two regions join. I'll play it again. Okay, I mean, in terms of time and the musicality of the piece, it doesn't sound too bad, but there is a click which I can hear, and so I'm going to go back into this once more. You notice that this is how I could lose the bit that I want to edit, because I haven't got my cursor at that point. So I'm going to remedy that. So now I zoom in, and I zoom into the right place. So at this point, what I might want to do is to apply a crossfade between this region here and the adjoining one, and that will mean that there will be a fade out of the first region simultaneously with a fade in of the second, which should smooth out any audio discontinuities that are there. What I need to do though for that is to make a slight overlap of the two adjoining regions, and in this particular instance it only needs to be slight. There are times where you need to kind of fiddle a bit with the audio in order to make it right, but in this case I probably don't need very much. So I'm just going to make a small overlap like that, and then I need to make a selection which overlaps the two kind of ends, if you like, of the regions. So it covers both the end of the first region and the beginning of the second. Having done that, I'm going to go to my edit menu, and I'm going to go down to fades at the bottom. If I click on create, now you can see that there's a key command there, which is Command F. You'll find that a great deal quicker to use. But if I click on that, then we get a crossfade window, and it automatically gives me an equal power crossfade, which basically means that there should be no dip in audio between, as the fade is going on. In fact, the fade here is so short that you probably wouldn't hear it anyway. But sometimes your crossfades may be longer, and I mean, obviously you need to experiment with this to see where the problems might arise. The more you do so, the more you'll learn. But you can have an alternative which is an equal gain, and although it doesn't suggest it from what you can see there, the nature of the way sound operates dictates that basically you will quite often get a bit of a dip in volume if you use an equal gain. So we will stick with the equal power. Obviously there are alternatives which you can explore on your own if you start messing about with these alternative settings. Okay, that, and it creates a crossfade for you. And now simultaneously you will notice that if you go to your the file where you stored your stuff, so the file is called editing. So audio files, remember we've got all our Chopin split stereo files, so essentially lots of mono files with .l.r on them. Now if I go to fade files, you will notice that I have two fade files in there. And those are for my left and right channels. They are named, you will notice, rather counterintuitively. You will have no idea which fade goes with which audio file or which crossfade that you have visible in your editing window. That doesn't matter, and in fact even if you delete these, Pro Tools will remake them when it reloads the session. It's just that it saves the time of having to faff about doing that by if it's got these existing files in there. So that's just to show you how that's operating in the Finder view. But now, if I zoom out again, well, in fact, I won't do that. This is a time where pre and post roll is quite useful, because if I wanted to audition how that now sounds, you'll notice that the crossfade is very, very short, and if I try and play that back, I get a blip. Which is not helpful for me at all, because I can't tell whether that has improved the problem or not. It could well be that there's still a glitch in there. It could, I mean, essentially the whole crossfade sounds like a glitch if you hear it in isolation. But if you use pre-roll and post-roll, I'm going to now play this back and hear at least, and again it's put in obscure values in there for some reason, but essentially I'm going to hear about just over 1 second in, prior to that crossfade, and then about 2 seconds afterwards. So if I now press play, you can hear the result. And it seems that that's done the trick. The crossfade has removed the glitch that I had on there before, and all is well. So I can forget about that one now. So we move back to this, and I can go and concentrate on my next problem area, where essentially the same thing happens. So I will do exactly the same thing, place my cursor, zoom in, and this is again an instance where I might use the vertical zoom so that I can see where the problem starts, and it's much more obvious now that the problem starts here. So I will click there and make a selection which covers the dead space. I will go back to shuffle mode and press delete. And once again the two regions have kind of shuffled together. I'll zoom in again. Once again, having made that, having put the cursor there, it's zoomed into the right place. Now you can still see that there's a bit of a problem. Again, if I zoom in, you can still see that there is a gap between here and here. In fact, I could, if I managed to do it perfectly, and perhaps even if I zoomed in to the sample level, I could actually probably make it so that those two areas adjoin, and we wouldn't even need to bother to apply a crossfade. But in fact, I'm not going to do that, because the purpose of this is to demonstrate how the crossfade can be useful. So I'm going to get rid of that bit of silence, and again, since we're in shuffle mode, that's fine. They kind of jump together. Go into slip mode now and select my grabber, make the small overlap that I wanted before. Now